We were all alone, and there was no one else to help. My heart was racing, and I was scared. I felt a firm hand grab my shoulder. I have been residing in London for years now. My family and I moved here from Manchester when my father got offered a top-level consulting position for a large architectural design firm. I also work at the firm and commute daily to and from work using the London Underground, otherwise known as the Tube. For those of you who don't know, the Underground is a rapid railway system that services the London metropolitan area, much like the subway systems in America. I still take the Tube almost every day, and what happened to me 10 years ago in these tunnels still haunts me to this day. Looking back to when I was 11, and it was my very last summer in Manchester before we had to move to London. I eagerly wanted an iPhone for my birthday, which was still months away. My parents never wanted me to get a phone until I could afford to pay for one myself. Everyone else had one though, and I felt left out. I begged and pleaded for weeks to convince my parents, and finally my persistence paid off. My parents gave me an iPhone for my birthday rather than having a party, but I was completely fine with that. The moving company had been here several days prior to our departure to transport all of our furniture and belongings to London as we prepared to take a 3-hour train ride to settle to our new home. I was mixed with emotions about leaving this place, but excited to start a new life in London. The afternoon train ride was fairly busy, and we arrived to the city that evening. Rather than taking a taxi from the train stop to our home, my dad suggested we should hop on the Underground instead. We all packed lightly, with just backpacks and rolling totes. Everyone thought it was a good idea, but I was reluctant at first. Either way, I didn't care. I was so occupied playing with my new iPhone. The transfer station was in Euston Square, but we still had to make our way to South Kensington, which was only 4 stops away. It was getting late and the tunnels were quiet, as it wasn't overcrowded with people. We all scattered together in one of the middle cabs. As the doors opened, I quickly grabbed the nearest seat before it was taken and quickly pulled out my headphones and stuffed the pods into my ears. I noticed how violently fast the cabin doors closed, with a lady voice echoing through the speakers. "Stand clear. Doors closing." I chuckled, because it sounded like the same voice you would hear in a commercial elevator. The train screeched into motion as I sat next to my older brother, and across from me was an older man, snatching glares at me whilst he was reading his book. I could feel his presence glaring at me from time to time, watching my every move. It was creepy and weird at the same time. I ignored him and kept tapping away at my phone. I almost dozed off in my brother's shoulder as I could hear the woman's voice in the background announcing every stop. My brother was sitting nearest to the doors, and my parents were on the opposite side of the doors, occupying their seats. The train halted to a stop, and I could hear my brother's muffling voice through my headphones, but could not clearly make it out. I felt him nudging my side with his bony elbows. "Get up, grab your shit and let's go," he said frantically, urging me to hurry up. I didn't realize that it was our stop, and when I turned to look over my shoulder, I could see my parents quickly walking out into the platform, with my brother right behind them as I was still glued to the seat. I remembered those doors closing fast, and I panicked, knowing that at that moment I'd get left behind. I sprang from my chair, grabbed my luggage, and tried to dart out as the lady again uttered, "Stand clear. Doors closing." It was too late. The doors were slamming shut, and my brother speared his arms through the doors, forming a wedge to try and pry it back open. But it was too strong. I can still see my dad pulling him away as the train started moving. Through the gap I could hear my dad shouting loudly, "Get off at the next stop and we'll come and find you. Stay put!" Frozen in place, staring at my family as the train slowly rolled away. Their figures slowly getting smaller and smaller until they were gone. My heart was racing, and I was scared. I couldn't believe this was happening to me. Standing there, glaring out the window in disbelief, I felt a firm hand grab my shoulder. It was the man who sat across from me. Towering behind me, he echoed, "I can help you find your parents. I'll take care of you." He said it in a slow, deep and gritty voice, which made me uneasy. It was creepy in a way, but he was older than dirt. It was late. We were all alone, and there was no one else to help. The entire time he kept his rough, dry hands on my shoulder. I stood there until the next stop, which was only a few minutes away, but it felt like forever. Not once did I turn back to respond. I could see the reflection of faces reflecting from the glass. The doors opened, and we stepped out and walked towards the benches next to the concrete walls. "My dad told me to wait here," I said, struggling to get the words out of my mouth. He quickly grabbed my right arm, and I could feel the strength of his grip through my light coat. He ushered me to walk beside him as he whispered, "Do as I say, and you'll be safe. Do not scream or make a sound, or you will die. You are mine now." At that moment, I knew I was in trouble. We began to walk the opposite direction from where my parents' train would be coming from. I knew in my head he was trying to kidnap me. My heart raced in fear as sweat began to fill my palms. This situation was getting ugly, and I had to act fast. With the man still locking onto my arm, I saw a tunnel that would lead me to the next stop. At that moment, I purposely let go of the rolling suitcase as a diversion, and when the handle slammed against the concrete floor, he reacted to the sound so quickly and turned his head. At that split second, he loosened his grip, and I swung away at his hand, leaped from the platform, and bolted into the black tunnel. Little did he know, I played striker for my soccer club and was lightning fast. I could run for days and there was no way he was going to catch me. I ran as fast and as hard as I could until my calves began to burn. I looked back, and he was gone. I was still running, but at this point it was more of a fast jog than a sprint. I was only running for a few minutes, and I still hadn't seen a train. I eventually knew one would be coming right towards me, or behind me. I had to get to the nearest stop or find somewhere to hide. It was pitch black, but my eyes had adapted to the darkness, and I could make out what looked to be another tunnel adjacent to the one I'm running through. I pulled out my phone and shined the light in that direction. There it was. Another small, hidden tunnel. Much too small for a train, but big enough for me to fit through. I crawled through it and thought to myself, should I stay here and wait, or keep on going and find help? It smelled like piss, mold, and rubbish while I was crouching through, which would have freaked out any young boy in this case. But I was more afraid of the old man and what he was going to do to me, so there was no comparison. I had no reception, so I had to find a way out. At the end of the tunnel was a fixed metal ladder that led to the surface. I climbed up the rusty thing, pushed as hard as I could on the metal door, and could hear automobiles in the distance. I gathered myself and sprinted into the convenience store that was still open. I told the cashier what had happened and he quickly called the police. They arrived a minute later and reunited me with my family. I was so happy to see them and gave them all a big warm hug. This was my new home.